What happens when a man who built an empire on noise runs headfirst into a woman armed with nothing but silence and facts? It all came down to a single moment in a stuffy hearing room, a quiet question that shattered an illusion of power. But to understand why that moment hit so hard, you have to go back 2 days earlier, to a day that was supposed to be a triumph, but ended as a ghost town. Picture this: Washington, D.C. The sky is a heavy, humid gray. $40 million has been spent to turn Pennsylvania Avenue into a monument for one man, Donald Trump. It's his 79th birthday, and has thrown himself a parade. Not just any parade, a military spectacle. Tanks are positioned like giant metal beasts. Helicopters hang in the air. Thousands of bleacher seats, draped in red, white, and blue, line the streets, waiting for the roar of the crowd. But the roar never comes. Instead, there's a polite, scattered applause that echoes in the empty space. Camera crews, the professionals who know how to make a dozen people look like 1,000, are scrambling. They are sticking to tight shots, avoiding the wide angles that would reveal the humiliating truth. Rows and rows of empty metal bleachers. The promised throngs of supporters? They are just not there. Even Fox News pivots, talking about the symbolism of the military hardware, anything to avoid talking about the turnout. And at the center of it all stands Trump, waving with a smile that looks bolted onto his face. You can see his eyes darting, scanning the horizon, as if expecting a flood of people to pour in at any second. They don't. This wasn't just a birthday party. He'd merge it with the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, turning a day meant to honor troops into a pageant for himself. And veterans across the country notice. The $40 million that could have gone to VA hospitals or PTSD programs instead went to pyrotechnics and robot dogs for a party nobody wanted to attend. The silence was deafening. But it wasn't the only sound in America that day. Because while Trump was waving at empty chairs, something else was happening. In Baltimore, in Oakland, in St. Louis, in hundreds of cities and towns, the streets were overflowing. A movement that had started as a whisper on social media had erupted into a national roar. They called it No King's Day. Millions of people, black, white, Latino, Asian, young and old, walked shoulder to shoulder. No big-name celebrities, no corporate sponsors. Just homemade signs, drums, and a single, powerful chant. No. Kings. In Phoenix, they packed the streets in 90-degree heat. In Dallas, college students handed out sandwiches. In Cincinnati, a 74-year-old retired judge gave a speech about a government that listens. It wasn't about left or right. A woman in Salt Lake City held a sign that said, "This isn't about red or blue. It's about right and wrong." By the evening, the numbers told the story. Maybe 40,000 people at Trump's parade. Over 6 million marching for No King's Day. The contrast was brutal. The lonely spectacle versus the roaring, living, breathing movement. The White House tried to spin it, of course. But the illusion was already collapsing. And while all this was happening, one person was sitting in her office, watching it all unfold, not with celebration, but with a cold, focused calm. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She wasn't tweeting. She wasn't giving interviews. She was watching the footage, saving the clips, and taking notes. Because she knew the real fight wasn't on the streets. It was about to happen in a small room, under oath. And she was ready. The hearing room was thick with tension. Not the loud, yelling kind of tension, but the quiet kind that feels heavier, the kind that makes you sit up straight. Cameras lined the back wall. Every seat was full. At the center of it all sat Donald Trump. He looked stiff, defiant, scanning the faces of the committee members, looking for weakness. He didn't find it in Jasmine Crockett. She walked in with a simple black dress, a folder under one arm, and the kind of focus that makes people instinctively step out of your way. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't look at Trump. She looked at her notes. Her voice was calm, clear, and didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. In reviewing the allocation of $42.3 million for the June 14 parade, she began, I found multiple inconsistencies. The original brief cited national unity and military appreciation. But from what millions of Americans saw, it looked less like unity and more like a birthday party with tanks. A few stifled laughs rippled through the gallery. Trump's jaw tightened. She continued, her voice never wavering. I'm holding a list of VA centers that are still underfunded, where veterans wait months for care. Centers that could have used even a fraction of that money. But instead, it went to drone displays. Trump leaned into his microphone. Excuse me. She didn't stop. There were reportedly over 6 million people protesting that same day. They didn't need drones or robot dogs. Their feet did the marching. Their voices did the work. That's a lie. Trump snapped, his voice booming. That's a media number. Now, she looked up, making eye contact with him for the first time. You can dispute the numbers, Mr. Trump, she said, her voice still perfectly level. But you can't dispute the message. The room fell silent again. You could have heard a pin drop. She went on, quoting veteran groups who felt their service were being used as a political prop. Finally, she closed a folder, slowly, deliberately. I'm not here to argue over optics, she said, locking her eyes on his. I'm here to ask who, exactly, benefited from this event, because from where I'm standing, the only person who celebrated that day was you. And that's when the room shifted. The silence broke. Trump leaned into the MIC, a condescending smirk on his face. That's cute, he said. You got all your little lines written out. I've seen this routine before. Someone looking to go viral. You think a few angry college kids are more American than honoring the military? I've done more for vets than you could ever dream of. Jasmine didn't react. She simply reached into a folder and pulled out a spreadsheet. Mr. Trump, she said, her voice as even as a flat line. This is from the Congressional Budget Office. It breaks down how the parade money could have been used for mental health support at VA facilities. That's not a soundbite. That's data. And what did your little protest build? He shot back. Jasmine's expression softened, not with anger, but with something that looked almost like pity. And then she delivered the line that would echo across the country. Respect, she said. That's what it built. Those 3 words hit him like a physical blow. You could see it. The gears in his mind were grinding, searching for a comeback, a way to regain control. But the old tricks, the mockery, the dominance, they weren't working. The cameras weren't his friends anymore. The audience wasn't applauding. They were just watching, and that silence was her power. Let me ask you something, Congresswoman, he sneered. Did you serve? I serve now, she replied calmly. Every day. And I think you know that parading tanks doesn't prove service. Accountability does. The mask didn't just slip. He tore it off himself. He shot up from his seat. Don't talk to me about scope, he yelled, pointing at a committee chair. I'm the only reason any of you are even on TV right now. A gasp went through the room. This is a circus. You want accountability? Go look in the mirror. You sit here acting righteous while your cities fall apart. The chair banged the gavel. Order, Mr. Trump, we are suspending this hearing. But he was lost in the rage. He had walked into her trap, but the trap wasn't made of clever words or political spin. It was made of his own ego. Jasmine Crockett slowly stood up, gathered her papers, and looked at the chair. I yield, she said. No smirk, no victory pose. She had already won, and he had just made her point louder than she ever could. The image that burned itself into the nation's memory was of a rattled, red-faced man yelling into a void, while a calm woman quietly held her ground. The moment it was over, the internet caught fire. The clips went viral, not just with political junkies, but with everyone. One edit, showing Jasmine's cool delivery side by side with Trump's meltdown, had 4 million views in 3 hours. The caption that stuck was, "Grace under pressure versus pressure without grace." Veterans, nurses, teachers, parents, they all weighed in. That $40 million could have fixed the AC in my VA clinic, one Marine tweeted. A nurse from Jackson wrote, I've never seen someone hold their ground like that. She made me proud today. But Jasmine herself, she went dark. Her social media was silent. She gave no interviews. She knew the story was stronger without her. She let the truth do its own wake. And in the end, that was the real story. It wasn't just about a failed parade or viral takedown. It was about a country exhausted by noise, finally hearing the power of silence. It was a reminder that leadership isn't about who shouts the loudest, but who has the strength to stay quiet and listen. It's about accountability. It's about respect. Because as Jasmine Crockett showed the world, real strength doesn't need a parade. It just needs the truth. And sometimes, the quietest voice in the room is the one that echoes the longest.